Hi, everyone. This is Marta Manriquez from the Graduate Student Center. Thank you for being here today. Today, Professor Kelly O'Bannon from the Communications Department will be presenting Grad Slam 301, Public Speaking and Delivery. Thank you for being here today, Professor O'Bannon.
Thank you so much for having me. I am so happy to be here to talk about one of my favorite subjects in the entire world, which is public speaking. And you probably think I'm crazy, this crazy person saying that to you, but public speaking is how we can communicate and share our thoughts and our ideas. And so while this may not be your favorite thing to do in the world, I'm hoping after today you have some extra tools or strategies or techniques that you can use so that way you are better able to communicate your ideas and hopefully have a successful grad slam experience. So I want to break this down today into two different ideas. I want to first talk about the Zoom environment and how you can control that. And then we'll talk about your actual delivery. And I know that there are some things that you cannot control. You can't control the person before you having a really great research idea. And you can't control how the judges are actually going to score you in the end. But there are some variables that you can control. And that's things that you can do to help stack the odds in your favor. And those are things that as speakers, we might not necessarily think about, but our small little tasks that we do can actually lead to some really great outcomes. So the first thing I want to talk about in terms of the Zoom environment is the materials that you need. You need to have a camera that is set in front of you where you're able to be seen. You're filling up maybe a third of the screen. Don't get too close where you're like this. This isn't pleasant, no offense. And you don't want to be so far back to where you're really far away. You're about a third of the screen is kind of what you're shooting for here. And you want to make sure that your angle, that you're not looking down on us and that you're not looking up at us. We don't need to see your nose and we don't need you dominating us when you look down. So camera angle, as simple and small as it might be, actually can change the perception of your audience's experience while you're speaking. I have this colleague that I have a meeting with every 2 months on Zoom. Wildly intelligent, so smart, such a good, talented person in their field. And every time I have a Zoom meeting, their camera's off to the side and they're looking at the screen at me. And so I get this the whole meeting. I get the side of their face, usually their ear, and I'm staring at their ear the whole time. I haven't had the heart to tell them because it's really none of my business. And it's really a more informal meeting, so it's okay. But when you're on this grad slam, if the judges are seeing your ear, this is not going to go well in your favor. So again, make sure you're filling up a third of the screen. Make sure that the camera is set in front of you and that it's fairly equal to where you are. You don't want to be too high. You don't want to be too low. And you need to make sure that you're looking at the camera. You can't be looking at your notes. You can't be looking at the screen off to the side. You can't be looking at your slide that you're showing because doing those things means that my eyes are over here. When my eyes are over here, it's bizarre. It's bizarre to be the audience member that's experiencing that. And when you're in a large room, it's a different experience when it comes to that kind of feeling. But on Zoom, you have to try to control that as best as you can. So make sure that you're looking forward, looking at the screen, because it's going to help pull your audience into your world and it's going to make for a more enjoyable experience for the judges. So we're always looking for that. The next thing you need to consider is your lighting. You have to make sure that you are well lit. When you are not well lit, what happens is you become kind of fuzzy. And so because you're fuzzy and distorted, it's a little hard to see you. It's a little harder to see your eye contact. And so it's a little bit more of a disconnect. And, I watched probably 30 different grad slam videos looking at this. And I did see some people who made to finalists who had some really fuzzy backgrounds. Maybe their first attempt wasn't quite so fuzzy, but their final attempts were. And it just creates a barrier. And if you're looking for the judges to choose you in the end and to select you as a winner, you want as few barriers as possible for them to be able to pick you. You're doing a pick me. And so you want to put all those pick me kind of things in your favor. I brought in actually 2 lamps today. I have overhead lighting above me, but sometimes the sun may or may not be out enough for it to brighten my room. And if I turn it off, look how much darker I am. And that's just one of my lamps that I turn off. So I brought in a lamp. It took me less than a minute to light myself, literally less than a minute, but it makes a huge difference. So if you happen to have an O-ring, maybe people who post on social media a lot, so they want their lights to look really good. O-rings are a really nice resource. If you have someone in your house or someone that you know who has it, maybe you can borrow theirs or just use a basic lamp and set it up. But it will make a difference. In terms of lighting, the one thing you don't want to do is light yourself from behind. Because if you light yourself from behind, that's called backlighting. And if you know anything about photography and you're kind of into that, what happens is the back is lit and you become a dark figure shadow. And that's just not what you're looking for in terms of being able to have the judges connect to you as a speaker. And again, we're not live in person, so that connection is really only on this screen. So you want to work to control those variables as much as possible. The next thing you need to consider, the material you need to think about is your microphone. You need to make sure that you can be heard clearly. And so you want to make sure that you pre-test this. I would test this well in advance. And then the day of, I would make sure I'm on whatever platform I'm going to be on. I would check to make sure it works again. Sometimes computers are quirky, they reset, and that microphone that you were going to use before isn't already pre-selected, and then you're panicked. You want to do things that aren't going to create panic for yourself in a presentation. Giving a presentation is already enough work. So you want to make sure that these things are already kind of done, established, and set in stone. So that way it's really easy to be able to hear you. And if you have any kind of external microphone that you're going to use, make sure you don't talk right into it. Talking right into it's like the pilots on the plane. Any microphone use, just not even in grad sound, just for the rest of your life. When you use a microphone, you have to move it away so you can project normally, so you sound normal when you're talking. People who are not very good microphone speakers hold it really close to themselves and it makes them muffled. So you want to make sure that the microphone's away from you, that you can be heard clearly. I have a pretty good computer, a pretty strong microphone. I do have an external mic just in case I need it, but honestly, this computer is so good that I feel like I'm pretty good to go and generally pretty easy to hear. The other thing that you want to think about in terms of your Zoom environment is kind of like the overall setting. So I'm going to give you my lectures here. I watched way too many presentations on Zoom during COVID. And I really recommend the number one thing that you do is to blur your background. You can add a background if you want, but at minimum, you need to blur your background. I have some shelves back behind me. It's not really anything too crazy, but there are a lot of people who have a hard time focusing. And if you have those distractions behind you, they're looking at what that poster is about. They're checking and seeing, oh, what's that a picture of? And then they're no longer listening to you. And you think, oh, these judges, they're going to have really, really good attention. You never know what can distract somebody. So again, you're stacking the odds in your favor and blurring your background to make sure that you are as clear as possible. You are the focus. We want to see you, not all the other things in your environment. Also, in terms of settings, if you at all possible can kind of control the people and the pets around you just for those 3 minutes, really, really try. It is not always easy to do, but it is really rough if a cat scurries across your screen as you're talking. And again, in a class or when I meet with my colleague who I get to hear his, see his ear the whole time, a cat going across a screen is not a big deal. This is a professional presentation. And professional presentations mean that you want to put your best foot forward. This is more professional and more formal than a Zoom classroom or you chatting with somebody on FaceTime. So be thoughtful and conscious of that. Maybe put your pets in the bathroom for just those 3 minutes or put them in the other room so they can't get to you. Because if they're wandering at the door or if they're near you, they might distract you. And you want to, again, give all of your time and focus to this so you can have the best possible experience. And again, give your best possible presentation. In terms of people, if you are doing it in your house, you need to let the people know in your house, hey, I'm going to be on at this time. I need you to leave me alone, not open the door, those kind of simple things. It is devastating to be giving a presentation and to be interrupted by someone that you know. Side story. One of my family members was on Zoom. They were in a class. They had to have their camera on. And their parent, their mom, was on the other side of the Zoom when they wanted to leave the room because they want to be there for an hour and a half. So she thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go ahead and drop down and I'll just crawl out of the room. Well, she dropped down on the camera. Everyone saw her, and everyone saw her crawling across the floor like a baby. And her child took it pretty well, and they teased him a little bit about it, but she was mortified. She had no idea that she could be seen. So I just want you to let the people around you so that way they know, so you're not distracted. So again, for 3 minutes, you can give your focused presentation, and hopefully it will go the way that you want it to go. My other piece of advice for you was kind of a logistical part in terms of your setting is about your appearance. Again, this is a more formal presentation than a Zoom classroom or as some sort of FaceTime. You want to make sure it's a little more formal than that. So make sure that you wear some sort of formal top so you're able to be seen. Have bottoms on, for goodness sake. You should never hop on a Zoom call without pants on. I don't know what people think they won't get caught, but if for some reason the camera angle accidentally changes, if you're in your boxers, you're going to be mortified. So put some pants on, super simple. Make sure that you have a nice professional top, and make sure too that whatever you're wearing does not match your background. So if your background is all blue and you wear a blue shirt, then you become a floating head, kind of like Disneyland in the Haunted Mansion. There's that lady's face floating around, right? That's what you look like. And it's bizarre. It's a weird experience to have as a judge to watch that. And it's going to make you self conscious. You won't even think about it until all of a sudden you turn on the screen. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm a floating head. About 2 years ago, I was on a search committee at CSUB for a pretty high level position here. And we were interviewing 4 different candidates. And one of the candidates had their background screen in this Kelly green. And it was their school colors that they were at. They were showing their school spirit. Super great, right? And it just so happened that day that they also wore a polo shirt that was the exact same school color. And lo and behold, what I told you happened. They were a floating head the whole time. And I could tell that it was bothering them. They were a little distracted. And it was an hour-long interview. And about a 20 minutes in the interview, she said, oh my gosh, I'm a floating head. Well, this is kind of interesting. Like, she was actually alarmed by it. And she was trying to kind of make light of it because she knew it was a little awkward. So, simple, easy thing to do. Just make sure that you don't match your background, and it makes for you not to have any kind of awkward scenarios. Those are just a few things you can do that can control your environment. Small, easy moments, just a few little things, increasing the odds in your favor to feel more successful. Now, outside of all the Zoom environment, all that kind of logistical stuff, I want to get into the delivery piece, right? This is public speaking and delivery. And you're probably watching this or you're here today because maybe you're a little nervous about speaking in public. Maybe it's been a while since you've done it. And so you want to know, how can you be less nervous? And the shorter answer is that nerves are normal. And if I could teach you anything, it's that you can't make the nerves go away. So don't be surprised by them. The best public speakers in the world still get nervous. I've been nervous all day. I literally speak for a living. I've been speaking for 6 hours since I've gotten here, and it's still something that's kind of exciting. It's because I care and I want to be here. And there are really kind of different categories of how nerves work, right? There's the I really want to do well. I want to impress the judges. I want this to be a great grad slam experience. And then there's the, oh my gosh, I didn't practice enough. Oh, I should have practiced more. Oh, I'm so nervous. Those are two very different situations. So don't put yourself in the I didn't practice category. And the I'm so nervous and I want to do well category is a very good place to be because it means that you care. If I could take a magical wand and just kind of give you that cure, it would be to have confidence. And confidence is something I can just wave a wand and all of a sudden you have. But if you kind of know why you're nervous and you figure out what's best for you, because everyone's plan's different, then you might have a better chance to find that kind of inner confidence. And what I'll tell you is this. First of all, Your nerves are caused by a chemical reaction in your body, and you cannot fight that. So if you're a shaky person, oh, I'm pretty good today. Sometimes I'm a shaker, right? Some people are natural shakers. You can't be too upset about that. But if I were gesturing, even if I were shaking a little bit, you wouldn't be able to notice. And this is on Zoom, so your shaking is almost even easier to hide. So unless you hold up your hand to the audience and say, "Oh, I'm so nervous," they're never going to know, right? That's something that you feel, but that people can't see. And if you are a person maybe who gets, flushed red cheeks, a flushed chest, those kinds of things are also pretty common. The simplest thing you can do is to make sure, one, that you don't wear red. Wearing red makes you look red. Even if red looks nice on you, it does make you appear more red. So you wear a complementary color to red, and that would be green, like a green or a blue or something cool. And that calms down the redness in your face, and then people don't notice. So if, again, you're not surprised by the fact that you're nervous, then when those things happen, you won't be taken aback by it, and you'll be able to move forward with your presentation in sort of an easier fashion. The next thing I mentioned about confidence is about your breathing. Breathing is the gateway to your voice, the gateway to your voice inflections, the gateway to controlling your nerves. And breathing helps you calm down. So you want to make sure that you're avoiding shallow breaths, those that really quick kind of breathing. That quick, almost panting like breathing is what leads towards panic attacks, right? Obviously, there's triggers of panic attacks, but the actual physical behavior itself, that shortened breathing can actually increase your blood pressure, it increases your heart pounding, and it stimulates all of those problems with panic. So, if you can relax your breath a little bit, you can kind of control that, and you are less likely to experience the physical reaction that can make you feel uncomfortable when you're speaking. Now, there's two schools of thoughts on this, on how you should do this. There was a research study done by Harvard Business School, and they took 150 students and they put them into three groups. One group, they said, listen, when you give this presentation, a 3-minute presentation, we want you to practice yoga breathing. Breathing in for 5 seconds, holding for 5 seconds, and breathing out for 5 seconds. We want you to, while you're breathing, to practice the mantra, I am calm, I am calm, I am calm. They were trying to lower people's blood pressure, lower their anxiety and excitement, and try to control their breathing. The next group they took, they wanted to try a different strategy. They felt that their research showed that anxiety and nervousness and excitement are actually very similar emotions. It's just the perception of whether it was good or bad. So whether you're nervous or excited, again, you have a quickening heart rate, you breathe a little faster, you're a little more shaky. Those things are all very similar whether you're excited or nervous. And so they told this particular group, they said, hey, I want you to lean into it. I want you to say, I'm so excited. I can't wait. This is going to be great. And they actually had some pump up music and they try to get them kind of hyped for the event. And then the last group, they said, hey, you just need to go up there and speak. Are you ready? And they took these three groups, and what they found through self-reporting and through the judges' scores was that the group that got pumped and leaned into it reported a better experience, and they were scored higher by the judges. And so I say this to you, not that I want you to, play your hype music, but I think sometimes one of the biggest challenges is we're trying to fight the nerves. We're trying to force ourselves to calm down. And when you're nervous, it's hard to force yourself to calm down. So if you just accept that you're going to be nervous and you say, hey, you know what? This is going to be great. I'm going to be so good. I am so excited to be here. And you lean into it a little bit more, you might find that your body is a little less resistant and you're going to feel a little more confident. Now, I'm telling you this, and I want to note to you especially that you need to do what's best for you. Some people really need that calming down yoga breathing, and some people really need the hype up kind. So you need to figure out who you are and what works best for you. I I am the hype up person. If I try to fight it, I am going to freak out. So I lean into it. I try to enjoy the ride and try to have a good experience. But at the end of the day, you should do what's best for you, just know that you have options. And one option isn't better than the other. It's what works best for you. After confidence, the next thing I wanted to mention is pace. And pace is the flow of information. How quickly is that information being released? That is influenced by your nerves, 100%. But what I also find in situations like the Grad Slam is what you're fighting is getting out all of your content in only 3 minutes. That's a tiny, tiny, tiny window. And so, what you'll sometimes see if you watch some of the Grad Slam videos, you'll see people rushing through the content as quickly as they possibly can because they want to get it all in. And this is where I say this is about quality over quantity. Speaking faster and getting all of your content in doesn't make you a better presenter. It's about the audience understanding your content. And so don't sacrifice speed for clarity. Clarity should be your absolute number one goal. And so you want to try to relax, try to enjoy the ride. Make sure that when you're practicing these speeches, I'll talk about practice a little bit more later, but make sure when you're practicing your presentations that you practice pausing. So you're not just plowing through the material. Again, if you've watched any of the Grad Slam videos, you will see that people don't slow down. And if you don't slow down and you just go through it as fast as you can, the consequences are kind of big. One of them is you sound robotic. Because you're speaking so quickly and everything's happening at the exact same pace, it can make you seem robotic and monotonous, which are two qualities you don't want to have. When everything sounds the same, people don't have time to be able to take in the information and to determine what's important and what's not important. But when you pause, you give us a chance to go, wow, that's really interesting. But if you're talking for 3 minutes without even a second pause, then we don't get time to take in that information and enjoy it and almost experience it with you and be proud of you. And so these are things that judges are looking for. They're looking for that kind of pull you in connection so they can actually experience this and see this research through your eyes. So pace is a great way to make sure that you kind of connect with your audience. You also need to make sure that in terms of pace, that you know your material. No amount of any prep at all can change if you don't know what you're talking about. And so you want to be strategic. Again, we're not memorizing, we're not reading. I'll give again that lecture in just a minute, but you want that nice natural flow. You should be able to turn to someone you live with and say, hey, did you know that? And explain to them your topic in a nice, simple way. And if you don't have that kind of fluency in your topic, it's going to make it a lot harder for you to control the flow, to control the pace. You're just going to want to kind of spit everything up to us. So you have to relax, you have to slow down, and you have to kind of enjoy the ride of this presentation. The next thing I want to mention is voice and energy. And voice and energy they go hand in hand for me. I know that they're different, but they really are highly influenced by each other. Voice has to do with voice inflections and voice projections. You want to make sure that you are projecting your voice loud enough for us to hear, and you need to test this. So what you should do is you should set up whatever room you're going to be in, turn on a Zoom call and put your phone in the other room and record yourself talking and play it back and see what you sound like. Were you easy to hear? Was it easy to catch all the words that you were saying? Because if we can't hear you, then anything you say doesn't really matter, and you're probably not going to do well in the Grad Slam. The voice inflections is about that kind of emotional element. If, again, all of the words sound the same, then what happens is that we don't know what's more important. So if you take a sentence like, this content is so important, that's all one note. If I say this content was so important, this content was so important, you can pick different words to emphasize, and it creates different meanings and different experiences. This is your research. This is your content. So you are telling us how we should experience it. Don't make us do the work. You're doing the work for us. So you've got this paper full of all of your notes of the presentation you're going to say. You should kind of look at it and engage it and say, okay, you know what? This is something I really want to hit. I really want to focus on that. And if you call that out to yourself, then what's going to happen is as you're presenting it, you're able to highlight that because you are intentionally doing it. If it all looks the same and it all sounds the same, then everything kind of gets muddled together and we have less of an emotional experience. The other thing about voice and energy is you just have to be in it to win it. And if you've been my student, you've heard me lecture this before. I can't make you care. And if you don't care and you're just going through the motions, people feel that. I am confident you have had a professor who has been terrible. And I'm confident you've had a professor who's been absolutely phenomenal. And if you were to compare those two in your head, you would know that terrible professor, they didn't care about you. They weren't interested in audience engagement. They just did their thing regardless of you. Typically didn't have a lot of energy, probably read their notes a lot. And there was this disengagement because they didn't care, you didn't care. And then you probably have that professor that just lit up the room, maybe even hated the topic. But when they spoke, you're like, gosh, that's so good. And all of a sudden, they've sucked you into their world. And now you're having this great experience. And then before you know it, time's up and it's time for the class to end. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that was a whole hour. That's because you were lost in the moment. And when you truly enjoy yourself, people will get lost in the moment. And so when you do this, you need to look at this as a joyous and exciting experience. I know that sounds cheesy, but really it's true. And if you're so excited to share your research and to tell us all about it, then we're excited for you. And you don't have to be like cheerleader, like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. I can't wait. It's anything like that. But there is that level of energy that you want to bring to the table. Because again, when you care, we care. And if you think about famous professors or famous people who are professionals in their world, imagine if the news anchor got on the news tonight and said, okay, so tonight our news is, you'd be like, what is this? Right? You would be taken aback. And so when people care about their work, it makes you almost enjoy it for them. And that's the kind of feeling that judges are going to appreciate and they're going to remember you because of it. So that voice and energy creates an undeniable connection. And you want to make sure that you take the time to really play off of that because you really only have 3 minutes. So you want to maximize that as much as humanly possible. And if you're wondering about whether or not your content might not be appropriate for kind of an energetic presentation, know that passion and energy are interchangeable. So if you have a more serious topic, you can still be passionate and care tremendously about that. And that will help people connect, even if it's a more serious topic than not. The next thing I want you to consider is your body language. I told you I watched several hours of grad slam videos, and I noticed that a lot of the finalists, maybe half, 50%, chose to stand during their presentation. And I say good for them. When you stand, there is an ability to kind of release some tension that sitting down might not be so easy to do. But here's my big but if you cannot get your camera angle to work standing up, please, I beg you, do not do it. I watched several people standing and they were dominating the camera. And again, it's bizarre. So don't do that. And if you want to sit, you're welcome to sit. But I recommend you sit a little forward in your chair so you're able to gesture. I'm sitting for my chair right now. If I were sitting back in my chair, I would look like this. This looks terrible, right? So I'm going to sit forward in my chair so I'm able to still use my body and express myself, and you're able to see that. It's a small humanistic element, but it's super, super big in kind of the Zoom world. Hand gestures is sort of the other part of the body language I want you to think about. I don't need you, constantly flailing. And you don't want to, put your hands on your face and There's lots of those kinds of random things. If you are a fidgeter and you know you're a fidgeter, make sure you're not wearing any watches or jewelry that might distract you. If you know you play with certain things, make sure those are removed. If you're a pen clicker, don't keep your pen nearby your area. You want to be kind of free from distractions, so you're less likely to accidentally do that. You may not even notice it if you do that. But hand gestures are a visual language. And every audience member has a different kind of experience. Some people need to listen to what you're saying. Some people need to see what you're saying. Some people need to be able to touch and experience what you're saying. And while you can't necessarily give us the experience piece, you can deal with the seeing and the hearing. So you're speaking to us, you're meeting those people's needs. If you hand gesture, again, it helps us focus on you. It helps us see you as the star. And so it doesn't get anything crazy, but you want to have these hand gestures to complement what you're talking about. So I'm going to tell you something really scary. And I'm warning you, it's going to be ugly. I want you to go in front of a mirror and I want you to practice your presentation. That's one. Two, I want you to hop on Zoom, just you, like you in your own Zoom room, and I want you to give your presentation. You can even record it so you can watch yourself back. You will be disturbed by how you look. But when it comes to presentation day and you can only see yourself, you won't be surprised by those actions. And that'll allow you to settle in and to be a little more free. Again, I'm a professional speaker. I speak all the time. I set up my Zoom room yesterday. I made sure I have my lighting. I figured out the distance of my camera where I wanted to be to where I'd be enough of the screen and to make sure that you could see my hand gestures. Because I know that people who are visual learners will see me say this and go, oh, I love that. And so you, again, want to reach all those different styles of communicators because it really gives you the best overall experience. Okay, I have saved the best for last, right? This is the practice piece. How do you practice strategically? I'm going to give you a few things to do, okay? To practice this presentation, do not practice in the beginning. Do not practice from start to finish. If you practice this as an entire chunk, then that entire chunk needs to be perfect. And I'm here to tell you today, you are not perfect. You can try as hard as you want, but sometimes things don't come out exactly as you as planned. And that's fine. Don't be surprised by it. Don't be scared by it. But if you practice from start to finish, if you forget one word, one small piece, then the rest of it drops away from you and then you're stuck. And my guess is you probably have been in a high school situation or a college situation where you tried to memorize something and you forgot one word, one small piece, and you felt that panic. So here is how you practice. You practice what's called chunking. You take your presentation, it's into 5 parts. You've got your intro part, you have maybe your background and methodology, what your research showed, and your conclusion. You're breaking it into your different sections. You practice the first section over and over and over again until it feels good. So practice looks like this. Okay, I look at what I wrote here. I'm reading what I wrote. I look at it, I set it aside, and then I say it. I go for it. And the first time I do it, it's going to be pretty rough, and I'm not going to sound so swift. I'm going to go, oh, that was a disaster. Okay, I missed this. Okay. And so you do that over and over again, not reading, looking at the content, and then trying to go for it. And what you'll find is after you do about 10 times, it'll be super consistent and pretty almost exact. A few words will change here and there, but it will be very consistent. And after you do the first chunk, you do the first and the second chunk. And then you do that over and over and over again until it feels good and consistent. Now, keep in mind, this is a 3-minute presentation. Your chunks are 30 or 40 seconds. You could practice that first chunk 10 times, and that took you 5 minutes. That's such a small amount of time to do. And then as you do the first and the second chunk, what you'll find is that first chunk gets smoother and smoother. And that second chunk, you get to build more and more and more. And then you slowly add each chunk until you've got the whole thing. And then at that point, you can practice the entire presentation. All right. So chunking is your friend. You do need to have a more formal session where you sit wherever you're going to be in front of your camera, get on Zoom and practice in front of yourself, record yourself. Those are really good things to do. But in terms of actually learning the content, chunk that information so you're not stuck as one big hole. It allows you to mess up, but not look like you messed up. Second thing I want to mention is I really recommend what I call cheap, easy practice. And so what that means is that yes, you should set out formal time to practice, but a lot of your pre-practice and learning the material can happen in simple ways. If you know your presentation is on X date, you've got 2 weeks, then guess what? Every single time you get in the shower, you're practicing your presentation. Every time. Practice just your intro. Practice chunk 3 or chunk 4 or the part that catches you the most. And you practice every single time you get in the shower. And if you do that, you'll shower probably 15 times in that 2 weeks. And you'll have probably 30 or 40 minutes just in the shower of practice. Not even extra special dedicated time, the simple stuff. One of my students is a gym rat, a self-confessed gym rat, loves to be in the gym. He said, "Professor, I did what you said. I turned off my music." He's like, which hurt my soul a little bit. But turned off my music. He's like, and I practiced my speech as I was, doing my exercise. He said, I ran on the treadmill, I was doing my speech. And that was something that he did an hour every single day. And you know what? His presentation was phenomenal. He knew his stuff. It wasn't memorized. He wasn't vomiting it back up to us. He was engaging with us because he had practiced the material as much as possible. So that cheap, easy practice, whether it's in the gym, driving in the car, drive safely, driving in the car, or being in the shower, are nice, simple moments that you can do before that kind of formal sitting in front of Zoom and practicing. In terms of practice, again, I want to emphasize, do not read your presentation. I know that there have been some presentations on grad slams in the past where people have read. Those people didn't do well. And if you look at the final presentations, if they are reading, again, there's a disconnect. There's a lack of engagement. And it looks like you don't know what you're talking about. And that's not true. This is your research. This is your baby. And so you want to be able to share that with us, again, in that kind of conversational style. And that is going to make people engaged. Sitting here and me saying, blah, 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 and just reading the list is almost a disservice to all the work you've done to get here. So don't sell yourself short and do not read your presentation. Please, I beg you. I recommend maybe that you have a small list of little notes. You can kind of put it near your camera, but it should be pretty basic. This is mine. Oh, let's see, here I am. This is what 30 minutes of content looks like. Yours is going to be significantly smaller. Okay. You want those small little notes in case you need them. I don't think I actually have looked at them once yet, but you want those notes just in case you need them, but they need to be minimal. If you put all the words in front of us and you read, you are hurting your chances for success. This is public speaking, not public reading. Do not read to us. It's boring. And again, it just hurts all your hard work. So don't sell yourself short. The other thing I want you to do is when you practice, I want you to practice intentionally. I find that sometimes when students practice, they practice kind of like this. Okay, the first thing I need to do is this. And then my research was about, and they practice in sort of a monotone way. And so when the event actually happens, they tend to mimic all of their practice. So when you're practicing, be in it to win it. You're in the shower, I want to be like the real thing, right? Like you're in the audience. You got to kind of go for it. You're in the car driving, you've got your music turned off. I want to hear you actually give it like you mean it. And when you're in the Zoom room and you're practicing, you're going to do it like this is the most important thing in the world. And you've got $100,000 writing this presentation. And if you can get to that space and that place, then you're going to find that when it comes time for actually to give the presentation, a lot of that passion and energy will transfer over. So don't practice just kind of like the boring, basic. You want to practice like as you want it to look like. So I think the other thing too is that you should kind of match what you're selling, right? Like you're selling this really great research, this really great idea. What does that look like to you? How does that passion look? And it's going to look a little different for everybody. Everybody has different personalities and different passions. I mean, if you're the next Martin Luther King Jr., I'm here for it. That's great. But not all of us are. And so don't be defeated by the person before you or the person after you. You be proud of you. If you stand in your own ground and you're happy with your practice, you're happy with what you're doing, and you're proud of your research, people are going to see that and people are going to feel that when you're speaking. And when they see and they feel that, that kind of matches what you're talking about. That kind of coordination is just an unbeatable win. And so someone goes, that was so good. I loved that about you. And so you've got to figure out what your personality is going to look like. And I think that when people figure out that they can be their own best version of themselves, that's where you see kind of like the true winners. Again, I watched all kinds of grad slam videos looking at them, and you see the winners. They're all winners for different reasons, right? You've got that whole piece of content that Dr. Vega talked about, but this is about you matching that delivery to sort of your overall goals. So, in the end, I want you to think of this presentation as something that you are excited to do. This is you sharing your work, your passion with the judges. And if you can get to that place and that kind of excitement to share your ideas, then you're going to find that your delivery is going to match a lot of that. And if you do a few Zoom environments, set up some basic things, you're just increasing the odds in your favor. You have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, then the judges aren't going to believe in you. It's when you mean it and you believe it that good things happen. So I hope that you have a little more confidence, and I wish you all the best of luck.